So, I'll be talking today about the Bhagavad-Gita and its relevance for leaders. And this is a three-part series. I'll quickly give an overview today of what I want to do in three parts, and then we will talk about today's part. So now, a Gita for leaders, Gita specifically for CEOs. Now, does it mean only for CEOs? I'll discuss that. So first, today I'll talk about the disposition of a leader. Talk about disposition of the leader and the dislocation of the voice. So I'll talk about the disposition of a leader, what that means. Then I'll be talking about, and tomorrow we'll find such a session, talking about the speech of a leader. One of the biggest things that leaders do is not just do things themselves, but inspire others to do it. So how can we use our speech in a way that is empowered? In the last session will be our attitude towards our work. Whatever we are doing, how can we see it more positively, more affirmatively, and see it in a bigger picture that is inspiring. So as you can see, this book, Gita for CEO, this is published by HarperCollins. Nowadays, there's a lot of interest in the Western world and in the corporate world in general to get some wisdom from traditional systems of knowledge, which could be used for the corporate world. For example, stoicism is becoming very popular in the world. There are books like Daily Stoic and number of how to face life challenges and stay calm, stay composed, stay connected. From Japan, Ikigai is becoming quite popular. So HarperCollins wanted me to present the Gita. So I have taken this Gita and presented it as 10 principles which are important for leaders. The Gita is presented in the form of a contemporary conversation. So each of these sessions will be centered on one key diagram, and I'll be elaborating on the diagram. And towards the end, we'll have time for question answers. So broadly, whenever I present this book, Gita for CEO, there are some people who have a question: what if I am not a CEO? What is the book meant for me or not? So, well, there are two different things over here. There is the position of leadership, and there is the disposition of leadership. And we may or may not have a position of leadership. We may or may not even seek a position of leadership. But everyone needs the disposition of leadership. Because at one level, we are all leaders, if not formally, then informally. So what does the disposition of leader mean? That I talk about this at a three level. That this is a sip of wisdom. Sip of wisdom is that we are all meant to be self-leaders. Inside us itself, there are different voices. Right now you're sitting, maybe there's one voice that is saying, I don't know whether it's the right thing, like coming for this class. I have to be the other voice is saying that I would have preferred sitting on a chair, perhaps. Otherwise, they say, maybe I should have brought some more please. Otherwise, they say, I brought too many more please. So, there are so many voices going on inside our head, and we need to actually bring them together. So, the CEO is meant to execute, but execution requires a certain level of harmonization. There are many parts inside which are pulling us in different directions. And if we do not become a leader of ourselves, we cannot function or succeed in life. So at a basic level, each one of us has to be a self-leader. Then I is that we are all informal leaders. We all influence people around us. All of you are sitting and hearing very attentively. Sometimes I go very inspired to give a talk. I think I am giving a TED talk. My audience thinks I am giving a bed talk. Now, if one person goes to nod off, the others see that, others also nod off. And then everybody is affected by people around them. Everybody is nodding. Why should I work at this? So our actions have at an informal level, they have influence on us. Then this is how culture spreads. If somebody grows up in a family where the only way of solving disputes is raising the voice, and whoever raises the voice loudest, that person wins. Then what happens is that's how the child grows up. But nobody will let the child to be like that. It happens when people live in a tough neighborhood. So that each one of us is informally influencing the actions of others. And that says we are leaders whether we know it or not. And P is potential. We all have lots of potentials, many potentials we do not know about. So in that sense, we may have certain talents, certain interests, certain abilities by which we may be able to become leaders in the future. It's not necessarily corporate leaders, not necessarily political leaders, but leaders can be very different fields. So in that sense, the book is for everyone. Gita's wisdom itself is for everyone. So having said this, if you look at it, so right now I'm talking about Gita for the CEO, how the book is for everyone. But you think, is the Gita about leadership at all? Or is the Gita a philosophical book? And then we are drawing some leadership lessons from it. Well, it's not that simple. Because what happens is the Gita is a conversation between two people. Who are those two people? Krishna and Arjuna. Now, if you consider both of these characters, they are leaders in their own right. Now, Krishna is, of course, within the tradition, God descended to this world. But even within the story of the Mahabharata, he's certainly a powerful person. He's one of the leaders of the Dwarka dynasty, of the other dynasty. Arjuna may not be the king, but Arjuna is the foremost warrior, the best archer, and the most critical warrior on the side of the Pandavas. So he's a leader in his own. So basically, if you consider, is the Gita itself a book of leadership? What is the relationship between Gita and leadership? So it's at three levels. First is the conversants, the people who are having the conversation, they are themselves leaders. Both of them are leaders in their own right. The second is that what is the topic they are discussing? It is the topic of decision making. The topic is, what should I do? Now, decision making is something which we all have to do, but the decisions of the leaders have huge consequences. We in America are witnessing that currently. Isn't it that the policies of the government are having huge influence? The leaders, everybody's decisions have influence, but leaders' decisions have a huge amount. So then, if you consider the focus of the Gita is not just like a friendly conversation about some casual issue. This Arjuna is asking, "Puchami tvam dharma sammo." I want to know what is the right. Arjuna has to make a huge decision. Should I fight or should I not fight? Now, there's war going on with Ukraine, Russia, there's war going on with Palestine, Hamas, Israel, maybe a war will break out with India and Pakistan. Huge consequences of war. And then, when the decision has to be made, it has to be very careful. But decision making is a responsibility of everyone. Decision making is especially consequential when it comes to me. The topic about decision making is also about leaders, especially important for leaders. And then, beyond that, if we consider the mode of discussion in the Gita, it is very interesting over here. See, Krishna is God, but not once does Krishna in the Gita do on his godhood to impose his will on us. If that's what Krishna had wanted to do, Krishna would have finished the whole Gita in 6 words. What are the 6 words? I am God. Obey me. Fight. Bhagavad-Gita, support. Always going. Krishna does not think this. So actually, the Gita is telling that just when there are leaders can lead in different ways, and sometimes leaders may just have to draw on the force of their authority and impose their will on others, like my way or the highway. Sometimes that may be required, but the most effective leaders don't work like that. The mode of conversation in the Gita is actually rational, ethical persuasion. That persuasion is Krishna communicates and persuades Arjuna. How does he persuade? He's persuading Arjuna through rational analysis. Now, rational analysis may happen in a particular frame, that they were at a particular time, in a particular culture, with a particular set of conceptions. But Arjuna is asking questions, Krishna is giving answers. It's rational. And what is ethical? Ethical is what is the right thing to do. So leaders are faced with decisions where there is no black and white. That one decision has some positives and negatives, another decision has some positives. Then ethics have to be weighed over. So it is a very relatable scenario for a person who is working today in the world. Arjuna has to. It's like, what is the situation for Arjuna? See, when a person is a leader often wears multiple caps. A leader plays multiple roles. And when they're playing multiple roles, which role should be more prominent to them? That's the question that comes. So, for example, if we consider one individual, Arjuna. Now, Arjuna, each one of us, we belong to many larger units. So, what does it mean we belong to many larger units? Let's say all of you. Now, you may be Indians or you may be American, you may be Chinese, your country, you belong to a particular country. You belong to a particular gender. You belong to a particular profession. You belong to a particular income level. Not just you, all of them, we also. So we all belong to various groups. And sometimes the larger group will pull us in different directions. So what does that mean? If somebody is a professional and they are also connected, and there is some urgent emergency meeting, and there's also at the same time maybe there's some crisis with the child who calls them at what do you do that? The two larger holes and two larger roles that come from. So a leader may be pulled in different directions. Like that. So the leader may say that I have to take care of the company, I have to take care of the employees, which is more important. They take care of the employees, they don't fire anyone. But the economy is going down. If you don't fire anyone, the company itself will die. Company will be destroyed. They take care of the company and have to fire people. I don't want to do that. So Arjuna is also faced with a leadership. He belongs to two units. On one side, he is a warrior. He's a Kshatriya. And Kshatriya Dharma requires him to fight. But he is also a dynastic leader. He's a member of a dynasty. He's a dynastic prince and leader in that. So he has a duty to protect his dynasty. So now which role is this? If he thinks that I'm a warrior, those people are criminals, I'll fight against them, I'll punish them, no matter whoever they may be. He thinks these are not people of my dynasty. How can I fight against them? So as a warrior, he focuses on his warrior duty, he's called upon to fight. He focuses on his dynasty duty, he feels I should not fight. So Arjuna is facing a deep ethical crisis. So many times leaders face situations where there are two choices and there is no clearly right choice. So each choice has its and in such a situation, the Gita itself is very eminently relevant because its topic, the people who are discussing are leaders, the topic they are discussing is a leadership topic, and the mode of discussion is a rational, ethical deliberation and persuasion. It is not dominating instructions or something. Now, having said this, today I'll speak based on 3.21 in the Bhagavad-Gita. 3.21 is the verse which calls upon us for leadership. So let's look at this verse over here. And this is brought from another book which I have read recently. This is Prayers Inspired by the Bhagavad-Gita. In this book, This book I've taken each verse of the Gita, our key verse of the Gita, and I've presented them as English poetry. And then there's a reflection, a prayer based on that verse. So you can recite this verse. Yad yad acharati shreshthas tad evetaro janaha yad amanam kute kastad anuvartate. Whatever noble ones do say, the common people follow their way. What they accept as right and true, the world is infinite and personal. This is now Krishna is saying Arjuna, the theme which I have taken away is bless me, O Lord, to lead with dignity and dedication during duress. Duress is when we are under a lot of pressure. So how can we lead at that time? So now, would anyone like to read this paragraph? We have second mic by any chance?
My dear Lord, it is so easy to devalue the influence that I have over others through my actions. Whether I know it or not, at some level, I am a leader to some people.
Talk about this. So now when Krishna is sitting with Acharya, what he is implying is that each one of us is already a leader at some. So going back to that earlier diagram, so many of the themes in the Gita, they're philosophical themes, but they can be understood through the story of the Mahabharata. I talk about the position of leadership. I talk about the disposition of leadership. Now, the position is something which is externally bestowed upon us. So, externally bestowed could mean that somebody appoints you are the leader of this project, you are the CEO of this company, you are the head of state of this country. Or it is as small as okay, you are the monitor of this particular class monitor. That's externally bestowed on us. The disposition is something which is internally cultivated. Now, another way to understand this is that the disposition of leader is, or the position of a leader is that how much others value me. When we have a position, people value us. The position of a leadership is how much others value me. Now, to some extent, it's important how much others value us. Because, say, if we are going to cook for a big event, now, if we have a plan of what is to be cooked and how it is to be cooked, the others need to cooperate. So, to some extent, to do anything complicated, if somebody has the position of a leader, then others need to value them. And sometimes if somebody is officially appointed to the position, then others are likely to listen. So, the position of leadership is how much others value us. The disposition of a leader is how much value I bring to others. The disposition is how much value I bring for others. I bring for others. So, for example, I may say that I'm going to lead the cooking. Okay, that's fine. But do I really know cooking? Do I know the various recipes? Do I know how to mix them in the proper quantity for this much audiences? And through my taking the leadership role, am I training others? Am I helping others? Am I helping others to develop skills, to become more experienced? So the disposition of a leader is that whatever situation I am in, I want to bring value. I want to add value. So another thing to understand is a leader is concerned that if somebody has only the position of a leader, their concern is, what can other people do for me? But the disposition of a leader is what can I do for others? Now sometimes what I can do for other people is maybe instruct them to do certain things, but by that they learn it. So there is the position and the disposition of a leader. One friend showed me a cartoon. Often we say that when we meet somebody, what can I do for you? But an egoistic person is after they see someone, what can you do for me? Openly ask it. What can you do for me? Can't get out of here. Nobody in that brazen, generally speaking. But the idea is that most people in life crave for the position of leadership. And yes, we can do a lot of good if we have a position. But what is much more important is to have the disposition of it. When we have both, that is when we are true. So in this session, I'll be talking about the disposition of the leader. And the next two sessions, in this session I'll be talking about how we can develop the disposition of a leader. In the next two sessions, I'll be talking more about how to develop the position of. Although these two are not completely separate, and both can be developed together. But to get an understanding of the difference, let's look at some characters. So I'll draw from the Mahabharata. Some characters who fall in these four quadrants. So if we start from the right bottom, so we have four quadrants over here. Now somebody who had the position of a leader but did not have the disposition of that. An example of this is Duryodhana. Duryodhana was born in royalty, and in that sense he had the position of a leader. But he did not really think about adding value to others. His consideration only how soon I can get the kingdom, how many people will respect me because I. So he was concerned about the position just for the sake of his own aggrandizement of. So now if we look at the story of Duryodhana, we'll come back to this point the other quarter later. But it's good to understand that see everyone in life sooner or later feels their value. So we may be taking care of our home and we feel that others, the rest of the family takes me for granted. And we are working to take care of our home, we feel that I'm doing so much work in my job, my family doesn't value that. If we work in our job, we feel our colleagues don't value. Everybody feels underdog. Everybody feels that maybe I should have more position, I should have more power, I should have more position, formal or informal. And that may be true through that. At the same time, if somebody gets a position without the disposition, they can cause a lot of harm. And our goal is whichever quadrant we are in, from that quadrant, we would like to come to quadrant 4. That where there's the position and the disposition of leadership both are there. But among these quadrants, now which do you think is the worst? First, second, third. You have the disposition of a leader, but you don't have the position of leader. At the worst? First. Okay, first is you have the position. Okay, let's look at it. Then write down one. See, if you have the position and not the disposition, what is likely to happen is we can be very damaging to others. Like here in America, there is a rule by which anybody can have guns. And there may be historical reasons for that. But if somebody has a gun, they get certain power back. If they don't have the maturity to use guns properly, it can be very dangerous. How tragic school shootings happen. Now, exactly what is the solution for that? When they take away the guns, some people say, because have better checks. So have better checks so that those who have guns have the right disposition, they're not mentally disturbed or whatever. But the point is, this position without disposition can be very damaging. Now, on the other hand, there is disposition without position. It can be very frustrating. Like somebody has the wisdom, somebody has the maturity, somebody has the skills, but nobody listens to them. That's a problem. Now, if somebody has neither the position nor the disposition, then what happens is, they are basically harmless. They may want to do harm, but they can't do much harm because they don't have a position. So they may be distressed, but they can't do much harm to it. So here they can do a lot of harm. Now this, as you say, is the most fulfilling. This is the most empowering. We have now the difference over here is this is frustrating at an individual level to have a disposition for leadership but no position. But to have position or disposition, it will damaging not just for the individual but also the social level as far as the leadership role goes. So what happens is that when we are going through life, every one of us will sooner or later feel that I'm being undervalued. I'm not being recognized. My abilities, my hard work, my dedication, these are not recognized. And that's understandable. And when that happens, what do we do? Which path will we take? So when we feel that we are undervalued, then he also felt like he was undervalued. Now, if you look at his life, he was born in English. There's the word air. You heard this word air? What does it mean? Success. Yes. So if there is some big king or there is some big patriarch, and they want to have somebody who is who will inherit everything. Now, whenever there is a king, they're very anxious to have a heir. But after they have a heir, they may be worried, what if something happens to my heir? So then, after they have a heir, they want to have a spare. Now, the spare is in a very peculiar position because if somebody is the second child, and previously there was the principle of primogeniture, where the eldest male child would generally become the successor, the king. So now, no sibling would want, generally speaking, no sibling would want their elder sibling to die, unless somebody like Aurangzeb or kill the So the extremes. But what happens? That person who is spare is in a very uncertain situation because there's no chance for them to become the king as long as the heir is on. So what happened when Duryodhan was born? He thought that he was the heir. He thought, why? Because the Pandavas were in the forest. The Pandu had retired. Whether they would come back or not, nobody was sure. So Duryodhan grew up with a bit of an entitlement mentality. And then Pandu passed away, and the Pandavas came back. And when they came back, at that time, as compared to Duryodhan, the Pandavas had lived in the forest, so they did not have anybody to instruct and anybody to carry out their orders. They had to do things themselves. So they didn't have that entitlement mentality. Far from that, they had lived in the forest with sages. Their parents had taught them to respect the sages. So the Pandavas were well behaved. They were courteous. Along with that, they were new. In any family, a new child comes and attention goes to that child. They're courteous. And then on top of that, what happened for Duryodhan was, what incensed him the most was that Bhima was stronger than him. That Yudhishthira was wiser than him, they didn't really care much about him. But his field was strength. And this guy is better than me in my field. Unbearable. So what happened? Duryodhan was the heir, and suddenly he felt he had become the spare. So now when this happened, it's natural that he will feel insecure. Now, from insecurity, one can go towards envy. Insecurity is basically, oh, maybe I'm not good enough. Envy is, insecurity is more self-focused on the self. Envy is more targeted towards someone else. Now, even his envy of Bhima or his envy of Yudhishthira is to some extent understand. We all may feel such emotion. However, from envy, he went down straight to enmity. So enmity is where he decided, I'm going to poison Bhima. At this time, he was just a teenager. That he could come up with a very scheme. It's scary. Recently, there was this TV series, Adolescence. He described about how kids can just become indoctrinated in the hate chambers that are there on the internet. You can do horrendous things. Now, in this case, there was nobody indoctrinated in Duryodhana. There was nobody contaminating or poisoning him. The poison was there in him. Some people say actually Duryodhana was a good person, Shakuni made him bad. But Shakuni was not much involved in the poisoning of Bhima. Shakuni was very much involved in the plot to burn the Pandavas. So it was not that Duryodhana was good and Shakuni made him bad. Duryodhana was bad and Shakuni made him worse. The thing is that he had power. And because he had power, he threatened the royal physician and got deadly poison. And he got poisoned in such a way that the poisons were kept by kings and they would use it for their purposes of espionage and other things. But he got, because he had the position, got that. And he put that in the food of Bhima. So to have power, see, everybody will feel some negative emotions at different times. But the thing is that if you have the position, don't have the disposition, then the person can do a lot of damage. So our character is often seen. One of the key things about our character is it is seen by our wanderings. That we all want to achieve things in our life, but to achieve what we want, how far are we ready to go? To say India and Australia have a cricket rivalry. Both teams want to win the match. But if, say, before the cricket match, Australia decided, we will put some poison in the food of Indian players. No, that's not a question. That's not acceptable. So you play and you win. So we all may want to win, but what are the boundaries that are non-negotiable? Everybody gets angry. But some people, when they get angry, what happens? That they just get into silent. Some people just start grunting and become uncomplicated and sullen. Some people raise their voice. So anger is an emotion everybody will experience. Some people stay silent. Some people become sullen. Some people yell. Some people may use foul words when they yell. Some people may raise their fists. Some people may take out a knife. Some people may take out a gun. Now, if somebody is the president of America or the president of Russia, they can take out a nuclear weapon and they can nuclear entire country. So the point is, what are our boundaries? That is very important. So if somebody has a position, but they don't have a disposition, they think that my position is meant to add value to people's lives. My position is not just to get back at people who don't respect my position. That is clear abuse of power. So when that starts happening, things become very toxic. So Duryodhana is a classic and tragic example of somebody who had the position of leader, but he didn't bother to develop his position. In fact, he kept getting worse and worse as time passed. When one scheme didn't work, he went to another scheme, And he could go to all those schemes because he had the power. So he probably would not have been able to do so many terrible things if he did not have that power. Now, if we move here to have the disposition of a leader, but not the position of a leader. The example of this is Vidura. Vidura was born in a royal family, but although he was born in a royal family, because of certain circumstances of his birth, he was not entitled to be the prince or the king. He was a stepson and not the direct son in the family. So then basically what happened? He was wise. But the problem with being wise or being in an advisory position is that others can reject your advice. And then it becomes very frustrating. So he was giving good advice to Dhritarashtra, and the problem was not that Dhritarashtra would not listen to him. Dhritarashtra would listen to him and then not listen to him. Dhritarashtra liked to hear good advice, and that's all he liked. He didn't like to do anything about good advice. So now, to have the position, to have the disposition, and to not have the position, that becomes very frustrating. But at the least, this person at this level will not do much harm. They will do some good depending on how much others are ready to receive it. If they have small influence right now, maybe their influence will increase with that. So for all of us, we have a certain disposition that is much more possible for us to cultivate. Now, sometimes what happens, if we have a disposition but we don't have the position, then what we may go down from here to here. Where why have the position of leadership? Why care at all for anyone? And unfortunately, this was the trajectory that one brother of Duryodhan, Vikarna, took. Now, Vikarna was we could say, the least vicious among the Kaurava brothers. And during the dishonoring of Draupadi, Vikarna opposed the whole thing, but he was silenced by Karna. And then his words were not listened. And then he tried to stand up for principle, but when he couldn't, he decided that I'm going to throw my lot with you. And eventually, he chose to fight on the side of him. So what happened was, he was not the eldest brother. He did not have authority over there. So he was not somebody who people would listen to. But then, he could have chosen to go to the side of the Pandavas. He could have chosen to not fight at all. But he gave up that disposition that, okay, I don't care. So sometimes when we want to do something good, but nobody is listening to us. Why even try to do anything? And then we may end up. Now, did Vikarna cause a lot of harm? He was not a very big warrior. He didn't cause much harm to the Kaurava force. So he did not cause much harm to the Kaurava forces, but eventually he himself was killed. So we don't want to go in this direction. Now, significantly, if you consider here, the Pandavas were also initially in this squad. And they also had to fight a war to eventually get to quadrant where they had a position, and the disposition of the position could be used. So initially, when the Pandavas they came back to the kingdom, they still had the mood of a leader. When Bhima came to know that Duryodhana tried to poison him, Bhima survived and came back. He said, I'm going to Duryodhana lesson. I need that person pulp. Yudhishthir was ever a peacemaker. He said, right now, it will just be your word against their word. We don't have any debate. And we are new here, we don't know who will support us. So we don't want to split our family right. So let him be just insecure. Let him be. We will be watchful and we'll try to communicate to him we are not a threat to him. It's very difficult for Bhima to accept. If you look at the story of the Mahabharata, you notice that it's difficult to find a pair of brothers who are as different as Yudhishthir and Bhima. In one sense, both of them are Kshatriyas, both of them are warriors, but Bhima, Yudhishthir is almost like a Brahman. Brahman Kshatriya means that he is very thoughtful, he is very philosophical. He almost bends backward to try to avoid fight. Now, Bhima was what you call a Kshatriya. He was Kshatriya. So he was itching for a fight. He looked forward for an opportunity to fight. And for both of them to work together was very difficult. That's why the key person was Arjuna. There are many incidents that Arjuna actually has to balance Yudhishthira and Bhima together. And he has to get them both to work together. So we'll talk about Arjuna in a future session also. But the point is, in one sense, Arjuna did not have the position at all. He was younger than both these brothers. Especially this happened in the when Draupadi was being dishonored. At that time, and when Bhima just lost his cool, and he said to Arjuna, Arjuna, bring fire. He says, I am going to burn the hands of this foolish Yudhishthira. It is because of his lust for gambling that the Panchali princess is in this terrible situation. I'll burn his hands, break fire. Now, Arjuna, what did I do to deserve this? Like one brother, I don't have to come between both of you. You do whatever you want. You want fire, you go and get fire. So, what did Arjuna do? He knew that Bhima was out in the mood of any lecture. He's your elder brother, how can you burn his hands? So Arjuna very expertly said, oh Bhima, just see how your words are increasing the joy of Duryodhana. Now, when Duryodhana wanted to humiliate the Pandavas, he wanted to humiliate Draupadi. Now, see, when he wanted to disrobe Draupadi, sometimes when a man forces himself on a woman, it's often thought it's a crime of lust. But it's not just lust. Quite often it's ego and power. Because somebody is simply controlled by lust, they could just go to a prostitute. Right? Force yourself on something. It's often much more ego and power than lust. But either way, when he wanted to humiliate Draupadi, it was not just lust and power. His goal was to break the Pandavas. If the Pandavas turn on each other, then I can destroy them. And now, when Bhima looked at Duryodhana and saw how he was smirking, Bhima was angry and he remained angry. But he was earlier angry and he was yelling, and now he became angry and he became angry. So Arjuna very expertly managed the situation. So the point is that sometimes whatever role we are playing, if we have a disposition, we may not have the position. We can still work on using the disposition to make a difference. So that Arjuna, when Yudhishthira was gambling, at one particular point, Arjuna just stabbed Yudhishthira's soul. Yudhishthira looked at Arjuna, neglected him and continued. There are some things he did not have the power to do it. So that may be true. But if we have the disposition, we all can make it. So I'll make 3 last points to take 1 hour each for each point. No, I talk about the disposition, how we develop it, and we'll talk about it more in the next session. But the key point is that when we talk about position is external. And external things are not necessarily in our control, or at least not much in our control. Internal things are in our control. Say, for example, if you come for the talk, as if some of you may want to sit on a chair, and there are few empty chairs, not a problem. But maybe there are not enough chairs. And you would have been more comfortable sitting on the chair as sitting on a compared to sitting on a floor. It's not there, now you can become irritated, you can become sullen. Why did the manager not put me to chairs over here? But that's not in your control. But okay, I'm on the chair. This talk is not going to go very long. Maybe I can sit, I can stretch a little bit, I can lean on the wall, and I can focus. So the disposition is much more easier for us to practice. The position we can acquire and we should try to acquire, but the position may take time. And during that time, it is possible that we may just give up. I don't have a position, so I'm comfortable sitting on the floor, so let me not pay any attention. I can come and give a talk over it. I can't control how many people will come from. But I can try to prepare myself as much as I can. So there's something which we can do and something which we can't do. So the disposition means we focus on how we can bring value, not how much value is being given. And this is where that 2.47 Karmanyevadikaraste Mahaphaleshu Kadachan. I'll talk about this verse much more in the future session, but it is actually a very empowering verse. See what happens? There is action and there is result. There is action, and as you can see, there is action, karma, and there is the result, there is the phala. Now we may all see the phala. So for all of us, now it is possible that if we get the result, we can do the action also better. We get the action, say if we sing, we like to sing, we sing and the people goes very nicely, we may be invited to sing more, we get more opportunity. This could go in the cycle. The action gives the result, and helps us to do better action, and helps us to do better result. That's possible. And that is good if it happens. But if it doesn't happen that way, now among the action and the result, which of these is in our control?
Action.
The action is in our control. Now, in many ways, doing the action is the disposition of a leader. Now, getting the result often determines dependent on the position. If we had a position, we are able to do it. So now, if we are here, now what happens is this is in our control. This is what we desire. But this is what we can determine. So it is not that we don't care about the result. This will shape our action, will shape the result. So when the Gita says in 2.47, Karmanyevadikaraste Mahaphaleshu Kadachan, that verse is describing the disposition of the leader. That we focus on what is in our power to do and do it well. This is the role that I am playing right now. This is the power I have for playing this role. I will do my best to it. That is the I will bring value into the situation. Now, when I bring value in the situation, how much will my whatever value I am bringing be valued by others? That I can't control. But when we do our action, that is, then we can determine this. This is where we bring value. We bring value into every situation, and that is always possible for us. And here is we are valued. Our action is valued, and we are valued. Now, how much we will be valued, we don't know. When Srila Prabhupada came to America, he brought value. He brought spiritual wisdom over it. But for several months and for almost a year initially, it was not valued. When he came to Butler, Pennsylvania, he was just treated like a curiosity object. If at that time there had been smartphones, people would say, Swamiji, one selfie, please. That's what people would have been interested. And Prabhupada searched around. Eventually, he found a place where he was valued. It was the most unlikely place in the counterculture. But that came with books. But Prabhupada never lost hope. Although he did not have the position of a leader, if you read his writings in the 1940s, 1950s, he didn't even know whether anybody was going to read his writings. But still, if you see, he's so diligent in putting his thoughts together. He is just as committed to sharing the spiritual message, and he has no leadership at all, as much as when he had a leadership of hundreds and millions. So the disposition of leader is focus on what I can do right. Let me do it well, and the results they come out, and if they don't come out, I will continue doing my part. Now, how to get that motivation to continue doing the part when we don't get the results? I'll talk that tomorrow in terms of the speech. We want our speech to be effective. But if it's not effective, why is it not effective? What can we do about it? What can we not do about it? That we'll discuss in the next session. I'll summarize what I discussed today about. There's 4 main points. The first point was about the Gita for CEO. So how each one of us is a leader. I talked about the step of this thing. Like we are all self-leaders, we are all informal leaders, and we all have the potential for leadership. And then I also talk about the when we are talking about the Gita itself, how do we know that the Gita itself is the book of leadership? We talked about how the characters, the persons themselves are leaders. The topic, the theme of the topic is of decision making, which is also for leader. And the mode is not dominating, it is ethical, rational, ethical. The Gita is very much naturally a book for leadership. And then I talked about what does leadership mean. In leadership, that is there is the position of leadership and there is the disposition of leadership. So position means it's externally how much value I am given. It's how much external value given to us. Disposition is internally how much value is brought by us into a particular situation. So the best is where both come apart. So, but if both are not there, then at least we start with one and we move forward from there. So we discussed about Duryodhana had position but no disposition, and he was quite damaging. Now, if somebody has neither, then they are relatively harmless. Their existence doesn't really matter much. Somebody has position but no disposition, then they can either get frustrated or they can be patient. If they get frustrated, then they will go downwards. This is what happened to Vikarna. But if they are persistent, then they can gain power. We discussed Vidura for most of his life was here. The Pandavas, they moved from here to here with time. So we all can seek to bring value into whatever situation we are in. Now, how do we bring the disposition of a leader? I talk about that means every situation that I am in, let me focus on what I can do rather than what I get. So of course I want the results, but my actions are in my control. The actions will shape the results, but I cannot control the results. If I am here, I desire the results, but I determine the action. I focus on the action and gradually the results will come. So focusing on our action more than the result, that is one key aspect of the disposition of leader. In this way, in whatever situation we are in, we can acquire the disposition of a leader and be on the progressive path towards making a bigger and bigger difference in our lives. Thank you very much. Hare. Are there any questions or comments?
Yeah, I want to ask that where do you put or where can we put Karna on this gradient, on this quadrant?
Yeah, so Karna, I would say that he was he had archery ability. So you could say that initially there's no description that he was vicious. He seemed quite virtuous. It is to some extent when he got associated with Duryodhana, that's when he started losing his virtue. He started compromising on his values in order to please. So it's curious, Duryodhana gave him position. So my understanding of Karna would be, Karna was here. Initially, he had this position, but he did not have the position of a leader. But unfortunately, by the association of Duryodhana, he went over. So that he eventually got the position. a warrior is not just a fighter. Warrior is a protector. And when he suggested the disrobing of Draupadi, what he did was the exact. He always wanted to belong to the warrior class, and when he belonged to it, he did an action which was completely antithetical, opposite the values of the warrior. So unfortunately, that was his project.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for this very amazing and enlightening class. Yeah, it appears that the message is this is calling for becoming more selfless, developing an inner selfless disposition of service rather than the sense of entitlement. Can we take that as the essence of developing the
So
disposition?
somehow, I find that the word selfless, it seems too less for the self for most people. Becoming selfless is like in austerity. Oh, wow. So my understanding is that with that way. The other way is that it's if we just focus on what we can, there is a satisfaction in doing our parts. So we could say cultivating a disposition of leadership gives us internal satisfaction. Gaining the position it also gives external satisfaction. So it's not exactly selfless. In the sense that we are giving nothing out. It is not that Krishna has built the world in such a way that we are meant to never be happy. It is not that Krishna's happiness requires our unhappiness. It's not like that. So that's why I prefer not to use the word selfless. It just seems too self-depriving. So what I suggest is that we focus on making a contribution. Now, another way to understand this 2.47 verses. Not a lot of people, like you see, there are people who everybody wants to make money. Making money is important. But as people start becoming a little more thoughtful, there's what is called a post-material culture, post-material culture. Where people say, I don't just want to make a difference, I want to make money, I want to be making a difference. I want to do something which has some value. I want to make a difference. But the problem is, sometimes I focus on some cause, actually I want to make a difference, but then I find I don't make any difference. The world seems to stay the same. So that is where it comes to making a contribution. Now, making a contribution means this is the ability that I have, these are the resources I have. I will make a contribution. Now, whether my contribution will make a difference or not, that is not in my control. Then we may share spiritual wisdom with someone. We are making a contribution. Whether that person will take that wisdom or not, we don't know that. Now, but so we may not always be able to make a difference. So I would say that we are always making something. We're trying to make money, that's a success at a gross level. Because making a difference is success at a more structural level, where it's not just my personal gratification, it's more of a social change that I'm. But making a contribution is that at least I am doing something of value. In the third session, I talk about Swadharma and how that's a very important and undervalued teaching of the Gita. When we are doing what we are meant to do, what is our Swadharma, we get intrinsic satisfaction. The famous Nobel laureate author, he said that I love being read, but my greatest joy is in having written. I love being read. Being read means anyone author who writes, he would want that people read his books. He or she would want that people read their books. But my greatest joy is in having written. If somebody has that calling, that particular nature, then just writing itself will give you joy. Obviously, everybody will want the greater joy. Some of us may have kids, and some kids, you just give them some slate, and they will just take a pen and just start drawing things. They'll draw and delete and draw and delete and draw. It's happening over there. So what is happening is they have that innate talent, and they have that innate interest, and they're getting a satisfaction. So we all, when we want to make a difference, we will not always succeed, but we can always make a contribution.
Because when we're talking about the four quadrants, my understanding, or at least the way I perceive it, like you perform or discharge your um, devotional service in a regulative way will get you from quadrant 1, 2, and 3 to 4. I mean, from any of those quadrants, you can go to 4 if you perform your devotional service in regulative way. Is that a true understanding?
We will talk about this in work as worship. See, it is, yes, but devotional service also has been explored as holistically. It was not that Srila Prabhupada stayed in Vrindavan chanting Hare Krishna and a moment spread all over. Prabhupada had to make a material change. So devotional service is not just about sadhana. Devotional service is also about seva. So, I mean, moving to the fourth quadrant, that's why we use the word just devotional service. And the question of what do you just mean by that? So it has to be a holistic understanding. Whether bhakti involves an inner change, but bhakti also involves an outer change. So when we do both together, yes, then we have the best chance of moving over the fourth quadrant. But that does not mean everyone will move. It is that sometimes somebody may do a lot of service, but they may not be able to see the results. That is also possible because Krishna has a plan and we all have a part in that. But we have the maximum chance.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much for such an incredible lecture. I think it was very complex things put in very easy ways to understand. Great application. My question is regarding leadership styles. There's a traditional leadership style and a servant leadership style. As devotees, we are promoted to have more humility and be more humble. However, how do you have the balance between being more of a leader yet having these qualities? What would you say are like the key components of having a good balance between being a traditional leader and a servant leader?
Yeah, so I say a traditional leader, depending on what tradition you're talking about. But in the Eastern society, it's more about acquiring a position and then imposing your will on others. But that's the negative tone. Now, sometimes when we say a servant leader is humble, the humility has to be very carefully understood. Humility is never about devaluing ourselves. It's that if I'm tasked with being a leader, and you say I'm giving a talk right now, and somebody starts talking loudly, I say I have to be humble. Well, okay, I need to be humble, but my humility will be that I should not scream at them. I should not yell at them. I should not badmouth them. But humility is okay, I will be humble. I'll let the person do whatever they want. No, humility is about valuing something bigger than ourselves. So I may have to think that how exactly can my cause, my purpose, my service be served? So sometimes I may need to be firm and I need to take. If you want to take that phone call, can you please go out? So is it that I'm exhibiting my ego? Not necessarily. It could be. It can also be that there are others also who are attending this talk. And sharing the wisdom is what I value. So letting people walk over us is not humility. If we have that definition of humility, you cannot be a good leader. So servant leader means, another way to understand it is that we put our purpose above our ego. Like somebody may disrespect me, but if they are making a valid point, like I am a team leader, I have a particular plan. So this my purpose. If I am a team leader and I have a particular plan, this is how we should do this project. And somebody says, no sir, this is how we should do it. And now maybe that person's idea is better than mine. And just because that person is my subordinate, I reject that idea, that would be ego. But okay, if you have a better idea to do it, let's adopt it. Let's do it. But to put our purpose above our ego is humility. But to put our purpose aside only in the name of, that is not humility. Thank you.
That's really fun. Thank you so much for the well-curated presentation. It was really, like you said, easy to understand. I understand the concept of seeing leadership as how can we bring value to others, how can we create a positive change in society and consciousness and everything. But sometimes I feel like we want to ask the question of what value can others provide for us, not in a negative way, but because we want to surround ourselves with people who inspire us and we want to learn from them. And we want to learn so we can better our own disposition. Is that the right mood? And if it's not, then what is that right mood and what is the balance between still wanting to provide our value to other people, but at the same time wanting to make sure that we are continuing to better ourselves as well?
Yeah, thoughtful question. Thoughtful questions. I'll have to be full of thought to answer them. Yeah. Okay, two different points. The first is that in terms of a general disposition to work. And the second is specifically in terms of interacting with people for engaging them or for engaging with them. So in general disposition, we should not be simply thinking, what can this person do for me? What can this person do for me? Our attitude should be, I want to serve and contribute. That's the general disposition. At the same time, we are finite beings. And we have limited time, we have limited energy, we have limited bandwidth for how many people we connect with also. So within that, we need to see where either in any relationship, whether I can bring value to that person's life, but is that person accepting that? Or in trying to bring value to that other person's life, is it that I'm getting dragged down? So if somebody is drowning and I want to help them, I go there. But if they are far heavier than me, and I try to hold them and they hold me, and then we both go down. That's not helpful. So in that sense, I would say that service attitude needs to be balanced with an acknowledgement of our humility and our humanity. That I'm a finite being. That's why among the people that we have, in general, there will be people who value us. Now, and there will be people who devalue us. So, what do I mean by devalue? Devalue means that we make a suggestion, even before the suggestion is completely rejected. We just criticize them. Even if we do 100 things for them, the only thing they remember is the 101st thing we did not do. So we all will have people like that now. So devalue us. So now, if Srila Prabhupada was in India, he was trying to do our people, and when people just not interested in listening to any reasons, but basically people not interested in listening to him and following. So now he could have his spiritual master, Bhaktivedanta Swami had said that if nobody comes to your talk, speak to the walls. No? So now Prabhupada could have thought that maybe that is Krishna's will for me, that I should speak for the walls for the rest of my life. No, Prabhupada did not do that. Prabhupada sought to go to a place where he was valued. So the idea is, even when we want to bring value to someone, we have to see whether they are accepting what we value. And if they don't, then we might go somewhere else where we will be. So the healthy situation is, we value those who value us. And we don't overvalue those who devalue us. There will always be people who criticize us, and sometimes we can learn from them. But if we let their critical comments define us, then we'll become paralyzed. And the worst thing we could do is that we overvalue those who devalue us. When we do that, that's like a recipe for constant insecurity and discouragement. And conversely, we devalue. We devalue those who value us. Oh, you always praise me, you always encourage me. But I see something good in you, that's why it's not flattering. On the other hand, what happens is we overvalue those who devalue us. Why did this person think like this about? Why did this person speak like this? Well, one aspect of detachment is we need to be detached from, rather, also that detachment means respecting people's right to be wrong. Right to be wrong, even in their opinion about us. The last question. Thank you very much for the class and the answers. The thoughtful questions, thoughtful. But my question was, you may be coming to this point in your class on Swadharma, and you mentioned in the beginning of the class that everyone is a leader in an informal way in their own capacity. So the 4 quadrants, I'm just trying to get like there's Varna and there's Ashrama. So are there like 4 quadrants for Varna and 4 quadrants for Ashrama? And I think this is something universal. In every Varna, every Ashrama, there will be these 4 quadrants. So we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But in every role that we play, we have to have that position and the disposition. We can't have the position, at least we have to have a disposition. In both in Varna as well as yes, whatever role we are in life. Yes. But the follow-up question was that, like you gave the example of Viduga, who even though who had the disposition, never moved to the side of position. Not that he never moved. I think after Duryodhana was killed, and the Dhritarashtra side is killed. That's how he was able to success. So he also moved, but it took a much longer time. But for most of his life, he was in that. Okay. Last question.
You mentioned the purpose word. It's the magical word. So some of us, particularly me, we've led our life without much of a purpose, and we've just followed the stream as it goes along. And is there something as a something? Is there a true purpose for a person's life, or is there a true calling, or is it how do we understand what our true purpose is?
I'm trying to understand your true purpose and making this the last question. No way I can answer this. But broadly, I would say that there is a universal purpose to life, and there is an individual purpose to life. So now, if we consider the metaphor of a mountain, and there's an ocean. Now, a river moves from the mountain towards the ocean. So, like that, the ocean is God, and our consciousness is meant to move towards God. The universal purpose of life is to attain love of God and to be lovingly united with God. At the same time, each river has to find its path towards the ocean. And each river, when it is moving towards the ocean, can do a lot of good to all the life forms that are there on the banks of the ocean. So now, the universal purpose of attaining God and loving God, that is common for all. But the individual purpose is something which we all have. So is it preordained? I don't think it's preordained. We have certain abilities. We need to use those abilities properly. But the river has to find its way towards the ocean. And each one of us, in essence, life has an element of discovery to it. That how do I pursue? Now, is there a calling? That's what I talk about Swadharma more. But the point is that is there one Swadharma for each one of us? And if we don't do that, then we're never going to be successful in life. It's not that we are programmed to be like that. Krishna has given us freedom, and He wants us to use that freedom properly. It is when in the spiritual world, the gopis cook for Krishna, Radharani cooks for Krishna. It is not that every day Krishna gives us a list of menu. Cook all this. No, the gopis know what they can cook. The gopis know what Krishna does. Krishna is surprised. So Krishna wants us to express our intention. That applies not just in spiritual world, also in this world. But the key thing is, in expressing our intention, we shouldn't go away from the ocean. We should be going towards the ocean. We find our way towards the ocean. Okay. We'll talk about this more in the third session. We have Venkat Bhattprabhu here. He's the Director of Hindu Affairs at Princeton. It's a pleasure to see you over here. Want to add any comments, Prabhu?
Enjoyed this so much, and I wish I could attend all three sessions for your practical wisdom, but also for how thoughtful your presentation is. Even your, I'm so struck by your reframing of selfless, focus on contributing to others rather than devaluing ourselves. Such a wonderful.
Thank you very much. He's also now doing this late morning podcast. He's a very close friend of mine. It's a great joy to see you here. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Bhagavad-Gita.